Okay, let's dive right into this. When you think of Switzerland, what instantly comes to mind? Precision watches, right? Or maybe that amazing chocolate. Or if you're really into politics, maybe you think of an incredibly stable, highly efficient government. Well, according to the Economist intelligence unit, Switzerland is a true full democracy. Freedom House even ranks it as one of the freest countries on the entire planet. But here is the paradox we're unpacking in today's explainer. Switzerland achieves this unbelievable stability by completely throwing out the standard rules of government that almost every other country relies on. I mean, they literally operate without a single capital city, without a solitary president, and the citizens vote on basically everything. So, to show you just how differently the Swiss do things, let's kick things off with a quick geography pop quiz. What is the capital of Switzerland? Seriously, give it a second, think about it. Is it Geneva? Maybe Zurich? Or what about Bern?
Well, if you guessed any of those, you're actually wrong. It's a total trick question. Officially, Switzerland does not have a capital city. None. And this isn't just some weird quirk of geography. It is the very first foundational anomaly of the entire Swiss political system.
Section 1. The missing capital city and why Bern is legally just a federal city. Okay, the key to really wrapping your head around this is the term Bundesstaat. Back in 1848, when the Swiss were figuring out exactly where to put their brand new federal state's political center, the framers of their constitution deliberately, and I mean intentionally, avoided designating a capital. Article 108 basically just said that federal legislation would decide where the authorities sit. So Bern became the seat of government, the Bundesstaat, but absolutely not the supreme capital. Why go through all that trouble? Because the Swiss have this deep-seated, intense aversion to concentrating too much power in one single place. To really get why, we need to look back at the timeline. Just 1 year before that 1848 constitution, Switzerland actually fought a brief civil war, known as the Sonderbundskrieg. So to heal the nation and appease the different cantons, which are basically their version of states, the new federal government deliberately decentralized its institutions as this massive nation-saving compromise. Sure, the parliament went to Bern, but then they put the Federal Polytechnical School way over in Zurich, and later, the Supreme Court was sent all the way to French-speaking Lausanne. It's a system designed from the ground up to prevent any one region from dominating the others, which brings us right to our next major rule breaker.
Section 2. 7 leaders, no boss. The Swiss Federal Council.
In a standard government setup, you know how it goes. You usually have one person at the very top, a president or a prime minister, who wields supreme executive power, the one calling all the shots. Well, Switzerland completely rejects that idea. Instead, they use the Federal Council. This is a collegial body made up of exactly 7 members who share executive power completely equally. Literally, there is no single boss.
These are the 7 members of the Federal Council as of 2024, representing different political parties and different language regions across the country. They're elected by the Federal Assembly for 4-year terms. And you know what's truly fascinating here? The sheer stability of this group. Because it's a shared executive branch rather than a tense winner-takes-all presidency, these members are very rarely voted out. In fact, in over 150 years of history, only 4 incumbent members have ever been ousted by a vote. It creates this incredible long-term continuity that most countries can only dream of.
Now, you might be wondering, hold on, don't they have a president of the Swiss Confederation? And yes, they technically do, but the title is almost entirely ceremonial. The presidency simply rotates among these exact same 7 members for short, 1-year terms. So in 2024, Guy Parmelin held the title, but the president has almost no special powers over and above his or her 6 colleagues. They still run their own department every day, they just get the honor of chairing the meetings and representing the country internationally for 12 months. Let's see how this fascinating dynamic builds into their actual legislative process.
Section 3. Voting on absolutely everything. Direct democracy in action.
So the Swiss don't just elect a few representatives and check out for 4 years. No way. In fact, in 2 cantons, Appenzellerhoden and Glarus, they still practice something called the Landsgemeinde. This is a literal open-air assembly where citizens physically gather in a town square once a year to elect their government and vote on laws simply by raising their hands. It is direct democracy in its purest, most traditional, and arguably most beautiful form.
But even on the larger national level, the Swiss people act as the ultimate guardians of the law, and they do this using 3 main tools. First up is the mandatory referendum. Any change to the Constitution automatically goes to a public vote, and it needs what's called a double majority to pass. Second, there's the optional referendum. Everyday citizens can challenge any existing law passed by Parliament, provided they can gather 50,000 signatures in just 100 days. And third, the popular initiative, where citizens can step up and propose entirely new constitutional amendments themselves. Let's actually walk through the exact steps of that federal popular initiative, because it's pretty wild. Step 1, you and your fellow citizens draft a precise, legal text for a new amendment. Step 2, you hit the streets and start collecting signatures. Step 3, if you succeed, it triggers a massive, nationwide vote where you need a double majority, meaning a majority of the overall popular vote plus a majority of the cantons to actually change the Constitution. You literally rewrite the rules.
And that magic number for Step 2? It's 100,000. That is the sheer number of signatures you must collect within an 18-month window just to get your initiative onto the national ballot. It's a high enough threshold to ensure that only issues with genuine, significant public support make it to a vote. It acts as a necessary safeguard against frivolous or joke changes. So think about this. No capital city, an executive branch split 7 ways, and citizens who can veto literally any law. How does this not result in total, utter chaos?
Well, that brings us to Section 4, the secret to stability, how breaking the rules creates perfect balance.
To truly understand this balance, we have to look at what the Swiss lovingly call the magic formula. Because power isn't a zero-sum, winner-takes-all game there, the top 4 political parties are mathematically baked into that 7-seat executive branch, all based on their electoral strength. Currently, it's a 2-2-2-1 split among the Liberals, Social Democrats, People's Party, and the Center. Instead of wildly swinging from left to right every single election cycle like we see in so many other places, these directly opposing parties are literally forced to sit at the same table and govern together in a grand coalition.
And that spirit of forced collaboration, it trickles right down to the legislature through what's called the mileage system. Basically, the Swiss federal parliament is a true citizen legislature. These lawmakers serve part-time. They keep their normal day jobs. They remain deeply connected to everyday life, working as teachers, farmers, or small business owners, rather than slowly becoming a class of isolated, out-of-touch political elites.
But honestly, here is where the absolute genius of the system really shines. Remember how we said citizens can challenge any law with 50,000 signatures? Well, because the government is absolutely terrified of having their hard work thrown out by a sudden referendum, they engage in intense pre-parliamentary consultations. They bring in all the stakeholders before the law is even formally passed to systematically sand down the rough edges. They proactively compromise so everyone is at least relatively happy. And the result of all that effort? Over the last decade, only about 5% of legislative acts were even challenged.
So what we find is that the Swiss identity isn't based on a single ethnicity or even a single language. I mean, they officially have 4 of them. Instead, they are what is called a Willens nation, or a nation of volition. They're bound together by a shared history, alpine symbolism, and a powerful collective will to govern themselves through federalism and direct democracy. They quite literally choose to be Swiss every single time they vote.
And the results absolutely speak for themselves. 96 out of 100. That is Switzerland's stellar score on the Freedom House Index for Political Rights and Civil Liberties. It's absolute proof that this highly complex, hyper-localized system, despite having no official capital, no single powerful head of state, and constant public voting on basically everything, actually works incredibly, remarkably well.
Which leaves us with one final big question to chew on. Could a decentralized executive in direct democracy ever work to cure the political gridlock in your own country? Or is the Swiss paradox truly a one-of-a-kind system that just can't be replicated anywhere else? It's definitely something to think about the next time you hear politicians arguing endlessly over who gets to be the boss. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.